anything about politics. My name is Jarrett, and I am here to answer all of your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, sitting in the middle, or sitting on the outskirts. I am not here to judge you, or fight with you, or roast you, or try to own you. I am just here to answer all of your good faith questions about politics. So, any good faith questions about politics, just throw them in the chat and we will get to answering them. I know politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language. So, this is the show where you can ask all the questions that you were too, I don't know, nervous or embarrassed to ask other people about politics, and you won't find any shade here. So, you don't need to worry one tick about that. So any questions about politics, just throw them in the chat and we will get to answering them. Everybody is welcome here. What's up, Ryzen? Good to see you again. Everybody is welcome, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, something on the outskirts. What's up, Mikhail Meme? Chloe says, do you think illegal immigrants who rape women should be deported? I don't believe that that is currently the law. I am actually interested in hearing the arguments for and against. Like, I kind of feel like if you do a crime, like a bad crime, and you are, oh wait, you're talking about illegal immigrants. Sorry. I had the denaturalization thing in my head because I just saw the story about Trump is trying to denaturalize citizens who commit crimes. That's what I was talking about. But yeah, obviously, if you are not here legally and you do a rape, then yeah, of course you should be deported. What is up, Spyrus? Good to see you again. What is up? Mikhail says, should ICE be deported? No, I think they should stay here and go to jail for their crimes. Welcome, everybody, to Ask Me Anything About Politics. My name is Jarrett, and I'm here to answer all your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated, be they left-wing or right-wing. Patriots, congratulations on your first shit in a week. I'm happy for you. Everybody's welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, something on the outskirts. I'm not here to judge you or fight with you or harass you or bully you. It is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. So long as you're asking in good faith, you will get a good faith answer. So yeah, I'm not here to fight anybody. I know that there's a lot of very popular TikTok shows and shit out there where Republicans and Democrats yell at each other and call each other names. Well, that is not what this show is. This is just a good faith engagement on the substance. Ivan Cisco says, can Gavin sue if the government holds funds for California? I think so. That's a little over my head, though. Like, I'm not a lawyer, so. What's up, Seaflon? Good to see you again. Ryzen says, thoughts on Trump's last interview and his many lies. I really enjoy when he shows the world what a fucking weenie he is by just, like, getting up and leaving interviews because he doesn't like being asked hard questions. He doesn't like being confronted with his lies. I didn't watch the interview. I just saw the headlines that were like, Trump storms out an interview like a big old fucking baby. That was my addition. That wasn't in the headline. Okay. Yurvi says, what do you think about communismo? I don't know who communismo is. Is that a person? Okay, let's see here. Akshay says, thoughts on Trump going to game 3? Good. Go. Get booed. Get booed by everybody at that game. I cannot wait. All right, so let's see here. Spyrus is asking, can you explain the 14th Amendment? Grants citizenship to all persons born or naturalized in the United States. So basically, birthright citizenship. If you're born here, you're a citizen. It's in the Constitution. Okay, let's see here. Seaflon says, Trump did act like a full-blown man-child. I mean, that's the subtitle for every part of his life, for his entire biography. Joe Markham says, here he's going after Pac-Man for telling the truth. Yeah, they don't like him talking about the fact that he's an extremely old man who seems like he has a lot of health problems. Thomas Bolo says, what are your thoughts on Marxism, and do you think the demonization of it are just Red Scare 2.0? I don't think it's Red Scare 2.0. I think it's the same Red Scare from before, just held over, It's kind of a dumb thing where people just kind of like decide that certain words mean what they want it to mean and not what other people think that it means. And so if I say I want universal healthcare, and someone goes, but that's Marxist, and I go, okay, cool. And they go, but that means you like Russia and you like Venezuela. And I'm like, oh no, I just wanted universal healthcare. And they're like, but that's Marxist. It's just like, I don't understand why. How is it that you are connecting these dots here? You know what I mean? Okay, Nikos, what's up with you? Gosh, says if you get 100%, if you 100% could, would you live somewhere with a better government or stay here and keep trying to help? I mean, just for the safety of my family, I would love to be somewhere else, somewhere with more environmental protections and legal protections for people. But, you know, um, yeah, I'm glad that my wife and I are staying and fighting, because we don't have unlimited resources. Our average Joe says, what percentage of people will be watching the next game just to hear the crowd's reaction to Mamdani versus Trump? Oh my God. Tell me that's going to be a fucking picture-in-picture situation where everybody will be screaming their heads off in support of Mamdani and booing their heads off at Donald Trump. Like, God, please. God, ugh, it would be like Christmas in June, everybody. All right, Marl says, best party in the UK and why? I've got no idea. I like the left-wing parties. I don't know what the best parties in the UK are, but I know the worst parties are Reform and the Tories. JLB says, do you agree with the way the Prime Minister of Britain has dealt with Henry Nowak? I don't know what Keir Starmer did in regards to the death of Henry Nowak, but I do know that right-wing ideologues love to point to one person that was murdered by an immigrant and then use that as a way of scapegoating immigrants for all problems when immigrants commit fewer crimes than naturalized citizens. TJ says, I like the left-wing party. Holy Shlomo. I'm going to give you an opportunity to not be anti-Semitic going forward, TJ. So maybe ask a question in good faith and we don't have to be enemies, Mark says, what do you think about third position? Is third position that whole like centrist thing where it's like we don't have to be Democrats and Republicans, we could be a new thing that's like in the middle, Quinn Topple says, what do you think of distributism and corporatism in general? I'm not really sure how you define those terms. Distributism seems like maybe we spread the wealth around a little bit as late stage capitalism has managed to funnel all of the productivity of the working class into the hands of the billionaire class. And I guess corporatism would be cutting, corporations are going to save everything with the free market or some shit. I don't know. Daniel D says, does Trump think he will be remembered like Theodore Roosevelt or George Washington? Yeah. He's trying to cement his legacy right now, and he will fail. I'm 90% confident that he will fail. Joe Padilla and Ryzen, thank you so much for helping me reach my first gift goal of the day. All right, Jacqueline says, how about stopping federal funding animal testing facilities? How about it? Is that like a thing that you would like? Is that a thing that happened? Like, talk to me, Goose. Zoe says, what job did the mayor of New York City ever hold? I don't know, Zoe, but he's doing a great job, so I'm not really sure what you're trying to achieve there with your comment. What's up, Will? Infinitely says, Trump wants the recognition without doing the work. I mean, I think it's worse than that. I think he wants the recognition despite actively doing terrible things. Connie and Vanity and Joe, thank you so much for helping me reach my second gift goal of the day. Mikhail Meme says, why is it so often old people who lead big countries like America or Russia? Shouldn't presidents be younger? I think these things happen in waves. Like there was this switch that happened in the movies in the 1970s in America where beforehand, where just like all these old people who like did incredible things just kept on, they just held on. But in the 1970s, we started moving the film industry to younger, cooler directors, So yeah, I just think that kind of thing just happens every once in a while where the previous generation just kind of like hangs on for a little too long. Right. John Abbott says, according to Wikipedia, third position is post-World War II neo-fascism. All right. Well, thank you for clarifying that, John Abbott. And I guess to whoever asked that, I'm against it. Okay. Nora says, is socialism or communism the answer? I guess, but I think the best way to look at this is to try to get America to kind of like rebalance its current political model. Like right now, we already do have a little bit of communism, a little bit of socialism in America. We just have way, way more late stage crony capitalism. And so, maybe we can just rebalance those scales a little bit. I don't think that we need to transition. our entire government into 100% communism or 100% socialism in order to solve society's ills. Legoat, so I'm going to give you an opportunity to not be anti-Semitic going forward. Just giving you that opportunity. If you want to continue being anti-Semitic, I'm going to have to boot you out of here. Kate and Joe and Aaron, thank you so much for helping me reach my third gift goal of the day. And you know what that means, everybody? That means it is finger hearts o'clock, the best part of every day. Okay. Joe Padilla says, will anybody be held accountable at the midterms? I mean, everybody who loses their elections will be held accountable, I suppose. But after the midterms, we will probably start seeing not actual accountability yet, but leaning towards accountability. It depends on how many seats Democrats will be able to flip. Kate and Joe, thank you for helping me reach my first finger hearts goal today. Boy, oh boy, we were really cooking today with these gift goals. Really appreciate that, everybody. Okay, Will says, have you heard of Hannah Spencer or Zach Polanski? You would love them. Oh no, I don't know who they are. Are they pundits? Are they politicians? Let me know. Luke Doggy Dog. Maybe Jesus is king to you, but he's definitely not for me. I guess it depends on which version of Jesus you're talking about. If you're talking about the heal the sick, feed the hungry one. Ernesto says, why do you think you have any relevance to answer questions from people? That's the real question. Well, I know a lot about politics. Not everybody does, so I offer my services here to explain politics to people. PL Nikta says, what's the best ideology? I'm a progressive Democrat, so I would go progressive Democrat. Okay, where are we at over here? Mikhail Means says, what happens if the Democrats win the midterms this year? So that's a really big question, Mikhail. There's a lot of things that could happen, and it really depends on how many seats flip in both the House and the Senate. The best case scenario is we get enough seats that we can impeach and remove from office Trump and his entire administration. Worst case scenario, we could at least stop more shitty bills from passing. We could lead certain regulatory agencies, meaning that we would be able to sort of like host hearings where we would have the microphone and we would have the gavel, so we would be able to steer the conversation a little bit more. But yeah, there's a lot of gray area in between that best and worst case scenario. Wacko Mind says, why would mandatory voting for a two-party system be desirable or undesirable? It's weird. I don't have an updated study on this, but they did a study on this back in the early 2000s, and they discovered that because of Australia's mandatory voting, people tend to vote more right-wing when they're being forced to, which that could be an anomaly. It could not be the regular trend, but people tend to react poorly to mandates. So I guess that would be the downside of it. I call me an idealist, but I kind of think the vibe is not to force people to vote, but just to show them how important voting is and make it a part of your civic responsibility. Like let's bring shame back for people that don't vote or vote irresponsibly. Okay, Wacko Mine, I'll get to that other question in just a second. Super Coach Joe and Aaron, thank you so much for helping me reach my second Finger Hearts goal of the year. Dridge says, what year would you guess the corporate greed leads to a huge American collapse? So I don't know what year I would put that at, but what I would say is that the impending collapse of America, its government, its systems, whatever, is not a foregone conclusion. And, as the people fight and the people vote and the people strike and protest and use political pressure, I think that we are able to steer ourselves away from the brink much more effectively. Like we've been doing a great job during the second Trump administration. There's been a lot of progress and we've stopped a lot of bad from happening. Like I'm kind of stunned by how they have managed to achieve a lot of what they were trying to do in Project 2025, but yet even with those advances, they still have not been able to fully fascistize America. Like there've been so many losses on their side, and their incompetence, I think, is part of the issue there. But yeah, it is pretty stunning. Like we're not out of the danger zone yet, but But yeah, things are looking good if people continue to do the work, I would say. The work is working, is what I would say. All right, CM says, what's your opinion on Georgism? I don't know what it is. Maurice says, thoughts on United Ireland? If Ireland wants it, then I say go for it. Javi says, what do you think of the actual situation of Burkina Faso? I don't remember enough about that to talk about it. Frank Stacks, his opinion on Israel and Iran attacking each other again. What we are looking at is a catastrophic failure of Middle East policy by the Trump administration and his failed State Department. Like, we have watched the Trump administration stumble incompetently into escalating tensions in an already unstable area, where you had politicians like Barack Obama who were beginning the process of negotiating and normalizing relations with a lot of those countries. Now it's just back to shoot, shoot, boom, boom. More money and weapons to Israel, more people dead, more American troops dead, more instability, gas prices through the roof, Strait of Hormuz under control of the IRGC. Like, what have we accomplished except for death and and inflation and massive wastes of money and American ordnance? Yeah, good Lord. Okay, Ellen. Zoe says Obama gave Iran money. That is not true, Zoe. Obama unfroze assets, and in exchange, we stopped their nuclear program. And right now, Trump has already given Iran more money and has not stopped their nuclear program. All right, CM says Georgism is where your income doesn't get taxed, but your land and resources do, eliminating the greed. Oh, that's interesting. I would need to look more into it. ELN says opinion on communism. If communism is workers owning the means of production, then I'm for it. If communism is the government tells everybody what job they're allowed to do, then I'm not for it. Sophie says, what's your opinion on Che Guevara? Mixed, I would say. I'm definitely not an expert, but seems like he did some good things and bad things. Javi says, opinion on Yugoslavia. Don't know too much about it. Wacko says, well, voting for people who actually restore honor within the system that both political sides say the other. In the last 25 years, there have been 3 full-scale wars across 4 presidents, 2 political parties, an estimated $800 trillion, $1 million. How can people trust them? Well, I think, Wacko Mind, you are doing what I call false equivalency, where you are including Democratic presidents in that, where I do not believe the Democratic presidents have been responsible for those wars that you are referring to. Like, what you're talking about are wars that were started by Republican presidents, instability that was inflamed by Republican presidents, and Democratic presidents who have tried to solve the problem. And sometimes that problem solved means spending a lot of money. Sometimes it meant using drones. And sometimes it meant diplomacy. We have a way better track record of a responsible, productive State Department from Democratic presidencies than Republican ones. I think the Democratic Party has a better platform on this. So yeah, I don't believe that your both sides argument there is accurate or productive. All right, Sophie says I spoke about the Citizens United case in my politics exam today. Oh, that's dope as hell, Sophie. Congratulations. Will says there is a large communist movement in the UK. Thoughts? If communism is workers owning the means of production, then I'm down with it. Will says, have you heard about what Nigel did today? No, but I don't like Nigel Farage, so I'm sure it was nothing good. CM says, I meant to say greedy landlords, but the message didn't finish. That's fine, CM. Yeah, again, I don't know enough about it. I would need to look into it. Mark says, what do you think about Hungary's new PM? He's the guy that took over for Orban, right? Like, he beat Orban. I have a hard time keeping every world leader straight. American politics really is my specialty. Max Schmidt says, why do you think the younger generation voted heavily for Trump unexpectedly? So I don't believe that's accurate. We saw a larger divide between women voting for Democrats and men voting for Republicans than we had in the past. And that included a large number of young men where the youth vote would generally sway more Democratic. There was a faction in the youth demographic of men that voted for Republicans. I do not believe that this was an organic thing that happened. I believe that this was the cause of a coordinated campaign of billionaires and right-wing propagandists who were infiltrating spaces and convincing men that the way that you are an alpha male and the way that you become a successful man who gets to sleep with models 24/7 is you go to this ideology, or you listen to what Andrew Schultz says, or you listen to what Joe Rogan says, or they were infiltrating chat rooms in Call of Duty online games and shit like that. Like, they have full control of all of our information systems. And so, yeah, I believe that this is something they were trying to do, and they were very successful at it. Okay, Stephen Peterson says, what are your thoughts on data centers, and if used properly, can they be beneficial for everyone? Oh, yeah, 100%. I don't think that anybody is arguing for zero data centers. I just think that we need to be regulating those data centers. We need to make sure that they are paying for their own electricity and using water responsibly, and not, dumping the runoff from their server farms into the groundwater and into people's farms and shit like that. Okay, Zoe says, that was because Charlie Kirk on college campus. I don't know what that's referring to. Will says, do you think American capitalism is crumbling? Yeah, but it's not, unsalvageable. What is up, Odinson? Great to see you again. Did you support Obama's actions in Libya and the drone strikes across the Middle East? So short answer, no. Longer answer, it's complicated. Like, if I'm remembering correctly, Libya was a situation where Obama asked Congress for war powers authorization so that he could stop I think president of Libya was gassing his own citizens or something like that. I could be confusing that with a different country. Again, foreign policy is not my strong suit, especially foreign policy from 15 years ago. Now, as far as the drone strikes are concerned, they were very sloppy, and a lot of innocent people were killed, and that is completely unconscionable. That is unforgivable. I think that we need to recognize that Obama, being the first black president and also a Democrat, meant that he was going to be held to a higher standard where national security was concerned. And so I understand being aggressive against terrorist organizations in protecting American borders. But, there was definitely overreach there, and there needed to be more oversight because, again, a lot of innocent people were killed, and I don't think that there's a good excuse for that. Okay, Will says, have you heard of Mark Field by-election? No, I have not. Stephen Peterson says, do you think a Democratic president can fix everything Trump did in just 4 years, or will it take more time? So I don't think that a Democratic president could do that by themselves. It depends on flipping Congress, and it depends on fixing the Supreme Court, because there's a lot of good that a Democratic president could do, even with Congress, that the right-wing, activist, psychotic current Supreme Court would just be able to undo. So, yeah, if enough people get out there and do the work, and enough seats get flipped, then we can fix this lickety-split. 4 years, we can get a lot done in 4 years. I don't know if we can fix everything, but we could utterly transform America in 4 years if we gave the Democrats enough power, and if individual citizens like you and me did not take our foot off of the gas and continued to be involved and engaged and organized, and we continued voting and continued putting political pressure on our representatives, et cetera, et cetera. But the billionaire class is not going to stop. Whether Democrats crush in the midterms or whether they continue crushing in 28, the billionaire class is going to continue flooding our information zone with reasons why you should not vote for Democrats, or you should vote for Republicans, or you should just not vote at all. And we have to be vigilant in countering that, especially because if Democrats manage to win a little bit of power in the midterms, it's going to be a lot easier for those narratives to convince people that Democrats are the problem. And so these Democrats that just crushed in the midterms are going to be in the fucking crosshairs again, and they may or may not survive, electorally past their terms. Jay says, is political polarization elite-driven or grassroots? Elite-driven. Aduno says, which swing state do you think will become a Democratic stronghold in the future? I don't think any of that stuff is written in stone. I think that it's possible that certain swing states like Wisconsin that have really strong grassroots organizations pushing people towards the left could potentially represent like a blue stronghold, but they're swing states for a reason. It's because they are, They're a hodgepodge. There's a bunch of different people in there. Thurman Munson says, so basically you Democrats want a socialist country and a dictator. Basically you guys want socialism. I don't know how you got that from what I'm saying. I don't even know what country you are referring to, Thurman. So let's see here. Somebody who doesn't have a name says, are you John Politics? I don't know what that means. P. Caleb John says, holy yap sesh. Oh, no one's forcing you to be here, buddy. Will says, how can we help Democrats from across the pond? I mean, that is a difficult question to answer. I believe that there are a lot of laws around foreign election interference. I don't know what you are legally able to do as far as messaging or donating or what, but I think that probably the best thing you can do is information sharing. Like, there are organizations that deal with making sure that progressive leaders win and progressive ideas become more popular, the same way that like CPAC is both an American and a Russian and Hungarian organization. Like, left-leaning political parties should be coordinating and talking to each other. Like, here's what we did that helps. Here's the things that the bad guys did that tried to take us down, and here's how we fought against it. Yeah, that seems like the move to me. Okay, let's get back over some of these Wacko Mind comments. Okay, Wacko Mind says, they seem to play the people off each other with that particular tactic, though. One starts the fight and the other does the best to end it as efficiently as possible, but still has a cost that can't be overlooked. Call me disingenuous all you want, but they profit, I could argue, for 0 data centers. All right, yeah. Wacko Mind, I think it's really easy to see both Democrats and Republicans as the bad guys here. Like, the information environment is spoon feeding this narrative to all of us, but you should recognize that when you spread that narrative, you are specifically helping the billionaire class and the Republican Party, because you're trying to tell people there is no good place for your vote, but there is a better place for your vote. And what Democrats have done to regulate campaign finance laws and to rein in the billionaire class is solving the problem, albeit slower than we would want, and not flawlessly as well. So yeah, I just don't think that you could make a substantive argument to that effect. I think it's an easy shorthand. Like, a lot of people love to throw that around, and everybody gives you flowers for saying it. Not you specifically. I'm just saying, if I went out here on my channel and I started talking trash about the Democratic Party, I could get 1 billion likes in 5 seconds. But if I then followed it up with but they're still better than the Republican Party, 0 views, 0 likes, blah, blah, blah. And I don't think that's a coincidence. Okay, let's see here. Crypto says, do you support Eat the Rich? I mean, what are we talking about? Are we talking about actually murdering and eating rich people? The answer is no. I don't condone any kind of violence. But I definitely think we should tax the rich out of existence. I don't think billionaires should exist. Aduno says, if the popular votes interstate were used, would it be extremely hard for Republicans to win the White House? No, I think it would just be fair. It would be fair, because then everybody's votes would count and more people would vote, and we would discover, who has the more popular idea, who has the more popular platform. It's not impossible for Republicans to win the popular vote, but it is true that the Electoral College gives them an advantage in winning presidential elections. Jake Litherland says, favorite beer? I don't drink anymore, so I like non-alcoholic Heinekens. Will says, Zach Polanski is the leader of the UK Greens. Okay. Michaela Beam says, why do so many strong countries as UK and France, Germany, etc. help Israel, even though Israel is a very powerful country with nukes, etc.? So it's a complicated question, Mikhail. I think the answer lies somewhat in a lot of those foreign countries used to just follow America's lead in matters of the alliance. And so where we have this protected group of people in Israel who were prosecuted, and there was a genocide perpetuated against them, and there are a lot of Jewish people in America, making them a powerful political lobby. And so where America has been supporting Israel for a long time, these other nations have as well, and it's been a very valuable place to launch military actions from in the Middle East, which is a place where we often need to launch military action. I see that. I see that coalition falling apart now, as people are recognizing the bad faith of the Netanyahu administration, the bad faith of the Trump administration. Like, I do not believe that they're kind of like blindly going forward. Okay. Wacko Mind says, so if you don't condone violence, how can you support someone who will? I don't know what you are referring to there, Wacko Mind. Can you tell me somebody who I support who condones violence? Because I don't know. It sounds like you're like hinting at something. I don't know what you mean. Will says, what is midterms? So there are elections that happen every 4 years where we elect the president and then we elect every House member and whatever senators are up. But then every 2 years, we also have elections where we don't do the president, but we do some senators and also every House member again. 9 says, why don't you think billionaires should exist if they worked hard for their money? So I don't think that they did work hard for their money. 9, I think they got really lucky and they gamed the system. I think it was a failure of policy that allowed them to exist. I don't think they worked hard. I think they exploited their workers. I don't think they worked hard. I think they inherited a whole bunch of money and failed upwards. I don't, if there's no working hard equals becoming a billionaire, because if that were the case, then people with 3 jobs would all be billionaires, but that's not the case. For the People says, if you tax a billionaire out of existence, there would be no Facebook, Amazon, Anheuser-Busch, Ford. Cool. Yeah, don't threaten me with a good time, man. Oh, all these fucking monopolies that have destroyed mom and pop organizations are gonna go away. Oh no. Oh, I'm shaking in my fucking boots here, man. Also, I think it's important to point out that by threatening to take away these organizations, you're basically saying that the billionaire class gets to hold us hostage because of how much power they have. Which, again, I say, fuck the rich. Okay, Careless Craig says, is this specifically country politics or just politics in general? I mean, my area of expertise is American politics. You can ask me about other countries, but I might not necessarily know. Crypto says, if a nation becomes communist in a capitalist global economy, how would they keep up economically? I mean, you could have a mixed system. You know, like China is technically communist, but they have a capitalist economy and they work with other capitalist countries. So, you know, it's not a, what do you call it? It's not unheard of. It's not unprecedented. What's up, Adams Garden? Michael Anthony says, amen. Tax the rich out of existence. Trey says, are you Marxist? No. American Ninja says, so you are a communist. That's what I thought. I'm not, though. Let's see here. Will says, what do you know about British politics? The only thing I know about British politics is don't vote for the Tories or for reform. Okay, let's see here. John Abbott says, if you hadn't had it before, you should check out Caliber. It is a non-alcoholic made by Guinness, one of the best non-alcoholic beers I've had. Well, you got to tell me, Caliber. You got to tell me, John Abbott, is this what style of beer is Caliber? Because I got a very specific flavor of non-alcoholic beers that I enjoy. Okay, RDC says, I'm a socialist. Good for you. Trey says, why not Marxism? Because I believe in a mixed model. I believe in a little bit of communism, a little bit of capitalism, a little bit of socialism. Okay, Adams Garden says, sports says, do you think Knicks will win tonight? Oh, I'm not really following, but I do love watching basketball. I just don't really have time for it because I got a baby. Crypto says, yes, you could mix, but that again creates rich individuals. That goes against your ideologies. Yeah, I mean, I don't mind if certain people have more than other people. I just think that we need to have a more balanced economic system. So in the Nordic countries where a lot of democratic socialists look to for their fiscal policies, there are still rich people there, but they don't have billionaires and they don't have people who can't afford food and healthcare and rent and higher education, etc. Will says, stout, lager, or ale. I like extremely drinkable beers. So for me, like a good Pilsner, nice, light, crisp, not bitter. When I was younger, man, I could fuck with the bitter beers, but now I'm old and I just want something crisp and refreshing. Okay, so yeah, non-alcoholic Heinekens. That's how I do. Caliber is a pale ale, so it's the same style as Heineken. All right, yeah, I'll give it a try. Okay, Whack-A-Mine. So the job of presidents and many elected officials, support the use of deadly force. Democrats and Republicans use deadly force against many threats, both foreign and domestic. So yeah, if I am going to vote for a president, I am going to vote for a president that I believe is going to use the least amount of violence and try to create a world in which the need for violence is decreased. And if you just look at the last 50 years of American politics, the answer is clearly that Democrats are going to do that better than Republicans are. So I don't believe that we live in a world where anybody who's elected president, regardless if they're Democrat, Republican, whatever, is going to be able to not use any violence at all. But I believe that we can move towards that world. But a Republican is never going to do that. That is not part of the Republican ideology. Yeah, it's not part of the platform. It's intimately enmeshed in the Republican ideology. Okay, SK says, so you're woke. Yeah, I'm pretty woke, I think. Crypto says, I'm from Norway, capitalist economy with a high level of social welfare. Do you want that system? Yes. Let's see here. Ethan says, I think no one can create a perfect society that benefits everyone. A party needs to suffer. I mean, I think that things can be better, Ethan. I don't think that we need... If you're looking for perfect, you are going to constantly be fighting against yourself. You ever heard the expression, Ethan, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good? Like, let's make better happen. And then maybe we can think about perfect later, but I just want better. I think better would be nice. 9, I think people that don't want to learn the language or work should get deported. Do you agree? Not necessarily. I think there's a lot of ways that you can be a valuable member of society if you don't learn the language or work. But I get it. Like, we want to have some standards for our immigrants. Maybe your standards are a little bit more aggressive than mine, but I feel like there could be some compromise there. I think we could both agree, 9, that what ICE is doing, where they're just rounding up any brown person they see, regardless if they're here legally or not, or if they're a citizen or a veteran, and detaining them in inhuman, illegal conditions, like, we can both agree that that's bad, right, 9? We're sitting here discussing the, specifics of a humane immigration policy while ICE is out there behaving barbarically and illegally. All right. RD says, I don't believe in borders. All right, good for you, buddy. Dedit says, opinions on technocracy. Depends on how you define it. Let's see here. Ethan says, I mean, to be honest, the USA is just in shambles at this point. And yeah, I do agree, but we're just fucked. Not going to lie. So I don't agree with that kind of pessimism, Ethan. That is what the people in power want. They want you to feel helpless. They want you to feel like we can't fix what's been broken. They want you to feel like this world in which there's a handful of people that get to fly around on private jets and eat caviar and lobster 3 fucking meals a day as they go from mega mansion to mega yacht, while there are also people struggling to survive. That's just the way that it is. That's just human nature. That's just the way it is, The powerful people want you to think, yeah, just gun violence is just a thing that happens in America. Like, we can't really do anything about it. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, no, sorry. Yeah, glyphosate, giving everybody cancer, PFOS in your water. Yeah, sorry, that's just the way it is. Yeah, sorry. So yeah, I think it's okay to be upset, and I think it's okay to be frustrated, and I think that it's okay to be angry that we're in this situation, and to recognize that, it's 4th down and we got, when we're 50 yards away from first down, it's a difficult situation that we're in. But if good people do the work, then we win. When we fight, we win. And the work is already working. So we just have to keep it up. Everywhere that I look, Ethan, I am seeing progress happening in America. And the bad people are fighting the progress, which makes it feel like the progress isn't happening or isn't even happening as fast as we want it to happen. But the progress happens. We just have to be vigilant. And we have to ignore the people that are telling us to be cynical and to give up. Alrighty, let me see here. Rayner says, what do you think about Israel? I support the people, but I do not support the government. Joe Gonzalez says, we are 28th in the world in gun violence, not first. Are we talking about are we including third world nations, or are we talking about, industrial wealthy nations? I believe we're probably number 1 in Western nations. 9 says, I think all immigrants can have bad people. Trump targets specific immigration groups. So that is inaccurate. 9. If you look at the history of what ICE has done since the beginning of Trump's second term, you will see that 90% of their detentions have been illegal. So it's not that they are looking for specific groups. They are specifically looking for brown people. And I would love for us to get on the same page here, man, because this is just like a fact. And if you don't think that's a fact, then I think you need to get your information from other sources. Okay, Mikhail Meme says, just to let you know that your answer on the Nordic countries do not have any billionaires. I never said they didn't have any billionaires. I just said it's different than in America. Okay, I'm pretty sure I didn't say that. Okay, Rich Shabao says, how human rights institution works. I'm not 100% sure. Wacko Mind says, remind us again which of the common folk wrote the Constitution. I mean, I'm not really sure what you are. I'm not sure what you're getting at there, Wacko Minds. Okay. Moving Target says, what's the best case scenario for Iran at this point? We need to end the war. Just end it. Just fucking take our losses and leave. Stop spending $1 billion a fucking day. Stop murdering people. Stop allowing American service members to get killed or wounded horribly. Stop giving everybody fucking PTSD. Like, just stop, man. Stop it. And then we can go to the negotiating table with Iran, and maybe we can get something that looks like the JCPOA, but worse. That is the best possible scenario. But there's no winning this war with Iran. I mean, maybe if we had a more competent head of the Department of Defense instead of an alcoholic Fox weekend anchor. Max says, do you think a change of the two-party system in the USA is needed? I think that without ranked choice voting, you're not going to get third parties being able to actually win elections. And the only way you get ranked choice voting is by voting for Democrats. So the only way out is through. Charlie, the urban spoker, says, how do you feel about social democracies? I mean, is that the same as democratic socialists? Is that the same as the Nordic model? Like, I don't know. You know, I want to make sure that we are agreeing on what these words mean before we start throwing them around. Alfie Heinemann says, thoughts on reform UK and restore Britain? It's bad. Far right-wing parties that blame immigrants for problems that are caused by the billionaire class are bad. They are liars. Do not vote for. Reyes says, so you know nothing about politics. No, I know a lot about politics. I don't know, because I'm saying all these things about politics that are all accurate, and so I know a lot of stuff, I guess, you know. 9 says, should college and healthcare be free? Yeah, but free meaning we pay for it, but with taxes, but every individual citizen gets to go to there for free. They don't have to pay for that out of pocket. Crypto Nizing. Can I come up as a guest, please? I have some questions. I'm going to say maybe, Crypto. I am mercurial about letting people up. Odinson says, how do you feel about Obama's actions in Libya and the drone strikes? We already talked about this one, Odinson. Mike D says, liberal tears. I ain't crying. You know, your mom cried when I broke up with her last night. Adams Garden says, education is the enemy of Trump supporters. Generally accurate. Fat Christ says, is Trump doing a good job this time around? No, worse job than the first time. And the first time he did a terrible job. Manos says, in Greece, who will be the best president in the next election? I have no idea. Okay. T Expor says, there isn't such a thing as PTSD. They are doing black magic on our soldiers. I think you're being facetious, right, T Expor? Okay, let's see here. Okay. Adams Garden says, you mean stop helping Israel and we will win peace and prosperity? That's a little overly simplistic. Out of sense, apologies, you have a better memory than me, LOL. Don't worry about it. Minus Touch says, what are your nuanced political discourse media sources? So there are 2 rules for being informed about politics in America. Number 1 is you need to avoid right-wing media, because there are a bunch of studies on this that show that right-wing media is the least accurate, and the people that only watch right-wing media are the least well-informed, even less informed than people who don't watch the media at all. That's number 1. Number 2 is every news source is going to have some kind of bias, because every human has a bias. So have a varied media diet. Use some left-wing sources and some centrist sources and some independent sources and some legacy sources and some forward sources, etc. Razvan says, what are your opinion on the Romanian parliament being dissolved? Don't know anything about that. Alfie says, do you believe illegal immigrants should be mass deported? I mean, it depends on what you mean by that. Do I think that, what does mass deportation mean? Is it a certain number of people? I don't believe that we should just be deporting people indiscriminately so that we can hit some magic number. But I do believe that we should be deporting people that are, breaking the law, not contributing to society. Ooh, Alfie says everyone illegal. No, I don't believe in that. Help, I'm stuck in a maze. Says, what party do you support in England? I only know that I don't support the Tories and I don't support reform. Fat Christ says, how do you think the conflict in Iran will turn out? It feels like another forever war. I don't really imagine it not being a forever war unless Democrats can wrest control of the government away from the Republican Party. Alfieheim says, you left out Restore. Is that a whole other party? Water Scalming says, if you supported data centers being built, would you agree to live within 1 mile for 10 years? No. Martin says, how much your tax supports immigrants? How big percent? Very, very... No, actually, it's negative. Immigrants put more money into the system than they take out in social services because they have to pay for things like sales tax, but they don't get to use things like Medicare, Medicaid, welfare, etc. Alfie says, yes, masturbation going to end the creeping Islamification of the UK. I think you need to get your information from other sources, Alfie, because it sounds like you're kind of right-wing pilled at the moment. It sounds like maybe you believe a lot of factually inaccurate things about immigrants. Bogos Binted says, so you support deporting illegals who are on welfare. There are no undocumented immigrants who are on welfare, Bogos. Wacko Mind says, do you think politics helps out the individuals as much, less, or more than the majority? I'm not really sure what you mean by that, Wacko Minds. Like, what's the difference between helping out individuals versus helping out the majority? Like, are you saying, like, politics helps white people but not minorities? Like, can you help clear this up for me, my guy? Wacko Mind says, should politicians be legally obligated to tell the truth instead of being allowed to legally lie? I would love some sort of legislation around accuracy coming out of the mouths of politicians. I think that sounds good. The devil's in the details, though. That could be weaponized against bad faith actors. I would really hate to see what a Trump Justice Department would do with that law. Okay, let's see here. Average Joe says, did you see Trump pout like a baby and stomp out of his Meet the Press interview? I did. The dude he's a weenie. He's a fucking weenie. You can't handle questions. Okay, Moving Target says, has there been any POTUS with a worse media relationship than Trump? I mean, I think Trump has a really good media relationship where he gets all this coverage. He's allowed to say whatever the fuck he wants with zero fact checking. He almost never sits down for adversarial interviews, and when he does, he just gets up and walks out. Yeah, if anything, I think that our media relationship with Trump should be worse than it is. Touch says, intent to knowingly mislead sounds like the Jack Smith report. Was that in the Jack Smith report? Is that a what do you call it? Is that a supportive comment, or did you mean that disparagingly? Touch. Odinson says, thoughts on the notion that democracy is the equivalent of the Wild Wild West. That does not sound accurate to me. I think maybe capitalism, crony capitalism, unregulated capitalism is the Wild West. All right, Wacko Mind says, do you think the media is an accomplice in overthrowing democracy? Yes and no. I think that's depending on which media you're talking about, the answer is yes. But if you're asking me about like legacy media, like the New York Times, I think they're complicit without being an accomplice. I think that they are attempting to be as centrist as humanly possible without recognizing that the victim in doing that is democracy. I hope that makes sense. Help, I'm Suck says, what voting system do you think works the best? Ranked choice voting. Manu says, what do you think of Jose Antonio? I don't know who that is. Abel says, hello, what do you know about Catalonia? Nothing. Will says, UK Greens, restore our fringe fascists. I generally agree with that, Will. 9 says, in Sweden, I always see on the news that an immigrant has committed a crime. Don't you think that's interesting? 9? that's always on the news? Like, is it always on the news every time a non-immigrant commits a crime in your country? Are you of the belief that only immigrants commit crimes and therefore the news is being accurate and only reporting that immigrants are the ones committing crimes, or are only reporting when immigrants commit crimes? Jim says, not welfare, but food stamps, free healthcare, medical support for their kids. That is inaccurate, Jim. Manu, I do not answer questions about phalangism. I believe that is a troll question. Okay. Oh, minus such as intent to knowingly mislead is Trump's election denial, but with awareness of the fair election. Oh, yes. Okay. So we're on the same page then. Oh, minus touch. Chad Bitson says, what do you think of ground news? I love ground news. Mikhail Meme says, yes, people who are natives to Sweden gets reported on the news from Sweden. So yeah, what's up? What is up? What is up, 9? 9 says, mostly I see immigrants, but sometimes I see Swedish people commit crimes, but mostly immigrants. So I believe if you look at the data, 9, that you will see that immigrants commit crimes at fewer rates per capita than naturalized citizens. So why would it be that the news is always reporting on immigrants, or mainly reporting on immigrants? Maybe there's a nefarious ulterior motive, potentially. Wacko Mind says, are Democratic politicians out in the protests against the injustices? They are. In fact, they're getting pepper sprayed. They're getting detained and arrested by ICE unlawfully, unjustly. Yeah, Democrats are fucking killing it. Help, I'm stuck says, what do you think of Kamala Harris? I think she's fine. She's a solid B politician, I think. Jesse says, everyone has DTS, but that's all you talk about 24/7. No. DTS, Trump to you flipped it. It's supposed to be TDS, Dusty. Oceanaholic says, how's the new baby? She's great. She's wonderful. She is a little ball of joy. All right. Let's see here. Where are we at? We're at, all right, almost an hour. Your mom says, yeah, I'm, again, phalangists questions I do not answer, and I'm against accelerationism. Moving Target says, why is voter turnout so bad in the U.S.? Excellent question, Moving Target. And there's no definitive answer, but there are a bunch of potential reasons that all kind of like work together. Number one, I would put on the list is the Electoral College. Because if you live in a non-swing state, you are being force-fed the reality that your vote does not matter. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican, or if you live in a red state or a blue state, your vote does not matter. Because if you're a Republican living in a blue state, your vote is basically thrown in the garbage. And if you're a Democrat in a blue state, you figure, why do I need to go vote when my state's going to do the right thing anyways? And same thing for if you're in a red state, but vice versa. I think the Electoral College is part of it. I think that we have been brainwashed by the billionaire class into thinking that voting is not important, and in thinking that both parties are the same, and in thinking that things never change in politics. And that has de-incentivized people to actually go out and vote. I think another narrative that the billionaire class has been flooding the information zones with for a long time is that you should not vote unless the person you're voting for matches your ideology perfectly and has never done anything wrong in their entire life. And that is also a narrative that was created in order to suppress the vote. There are also voter suppression systems in America where you have Republican governments in certain states shutting down polling areas in Democratic areas, or passing voter ID laws and then closing down DMVs in Democratic areas. Poverty makes it really difficult for people to vote. Having only one day that's a weekday with no early voting or mail-in voting makes it really difficult to vote. And so a lot of working poor people can't vote in those situations. Like, there's a lot of reasons for it, Wacko Mind says, red state, blue state is an illusion, though. There are people of both in both. I mean, yeah, but you know what I mean when I say red state, blue state. What I mean is that a Democrat usually wins this state in presidential elections, and senators from that state are usually Democratic, and there's probably usually more House members who are Democratic from that state as well. So it's a real thing, even if it doesn't mean that the population of those states is exclusively one party or the other. 9 says, "Are you against the death penalty?" Yes, I am. The death penalty is not an effective deterrent. We know this from the data that with or without the death penalty, crime rates do not change. Additionally, we do not have a 100% success rate in putting people to death. Like, we have put people to death who are innocent. And that is unforgivable. That is barbaric. That is a sin that is going to stain our country forever. So just get rid of it. Sophia, great to see you again, says, even though immigrants commit less crimes, since we don't know who comes in, isn't it hard to know who did it? Potentially, Sophia, I'll be real with you. I am not fully abreast of the statistical methods that people use to come up with that. But I see it reported from multiple sources. Different organizations have crunched the numbers and come up with the same data, So yeah. Okay, Minus Touch says, how do you rationalize informed voters with the practical single issue voters? Is this functional government? So I think in defunding education and deprioritizing education, the Republican Party has created a voter base that does what they want, which is to either not vote or vote in an uninformed way or in a irresponsible way. And the way that you fix that is you mandate civics classes in high school. You make sure that our schools are funded and that class sizes are the right size and no teachers are being overwhelmed and teachers are being paid better and students aren't being worn out by constant testing. I think solving those educational issues will solve that voter issue. But I think that trying to attack it from the voter side, I think that could potentially do more harm than good. I think that we need a holistic solution to that problem and not say that, like, oh, you have to pass a test in order to be able to vote. All right, Adams Garden says, can Electoral College be abolished/improved? Yes, 100% the Electoral College can be abolished. In fact, we are very, very close to making that happen. There is a thing called the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact that is basically, if we get enough states to sign on for it, we can completely nullify the Electoral College. So why do we have the popular vote? It's an information thing. It's like an intro. Oh, isn't it interesting that Democrats have won the popular vote and lost the Electoral College a couple of times? So maybe it seems like the Electoral College gives the Republican Party an unfair advantage in presidential elections. Maybe it's not doing the thing it's supposed to be doing, the Electoral College. Sophia, views on the SAVE Act. The SAVE Act is a voter suppression bill, Sophia, and the number of times you've seen my live stream, I cannot believe that you do not know that is my take on it. 9 says, do you know any Swedish political parties? I do not. Wacko Mind says, in your opinion, Mr. Berenstein, is it important to question authority regardless of who that authority is? Yes. Yes, I do. Luke says, what party are you? I am a Progressive Democrat. Okay, scrolling up. Help, I'm stuck, says Palestine or Israel. I support the citizens of both. I do not support the governments of either. Blanca Falcon says, thoughts on the Electoral College? I am against it. Blanca, are you aware of the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, Blanca? Are you aware of it? Do you know if your state has signed on to the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact? Because we are potentially one state away from getting rid of the Electoral College. All right, Odinson says, what made you truly start to become active in politics? I started getting interested in politics when I saw how the systems of America's economy and government assist the rich and fuck over everybody else. And I didn't think I needed to get too involved. Like I donated to Barack Obama, and then he won, and there was a blue wave election where Democrats got a supermajority, and I was like, all right, great, donezo. But then every election after that, I was like, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. Why are Republicans doing so well? Why are Democrats doing so poorly? This doesn't make any sense. And then we get to 2016, and there's this massive rout where Republicans fucking run the table and they elect Donald Trump. And I was like, all right, well, clearly more people like me need to be doing stuff so that shit like this doesn't happen, because it doesn't make any sense. It's not going to help. And I was right. And so yeah, now ever since then I've been doing stuff, whatever version of the work looked like at the time, I did it. I did it. Alrighty, everybody. I am going to start wrapping things up. If you want to support the show financially, if you like what I'm doing here and you want to support me continuing to do it, you can send gifts on TikTok. You can send bits on Twitch. You can be a super fan on TikTok. You can be a subscriber on Twitch. If you have Amazon Prime, you can be a subscriber to my Twitch for free. Costs you $0, helps me out a ton. And you can also join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. There's also a very fun incentive at $10 a month if you can afford it. And special thanks to all of my regular financial contributors. We got Average Joe and Pliff and Triska and Lauren and Grimicus and It's the Rocketeer and the Two Seans and D, Shannon, Carmine, and Patrick. If you want to have your name read at the end of the show as well, then be a Twitch subscriber, a TikTok superfan, or join the Patreon. Any questions that I was not able to get to on this live stream, please reach out to me. Do not be shy. I want to be a resource for you to be more involved and more informed about politics. So if there's anything I can do, use me and abuse me. Use me until you use me up. You can shoot me a DM. My DMs are open. You can email me through my website. Link is in the bio. Or you can hit me up on my Discord channel. Link is in the bio. The Discord is also great because there's a great community there of awesome people who discuss politics in a way that is not shitty. And if they are, let me know. I'll get rid of them. There's also recommendations there for books and podcasts and recommendations for civic actions that we should all be taking. Somebody just asked me like about how long have I been what do you call it, doing the work for. All the different things that I have done since 2016, we need more people doing that shit. So if you don't know what to do, go to the Discord, check out a thread called The Work. That is the shit. That is the shit that we gotta do. Gosh says, are you ending stream? I mean, for the day, not permanently. Triska says, do you still support Plattner in Maine? And why is it different from Swalwell? Excellent question, Triska. So I want to preface this by saying that it really doesn't matter whether or not I support Plattner, because I am not a voter in Maine. This is for the voters of Maine to decide. I think there is a difference, though, between Plattner and Swalwell, in that Plattner came out and said, I am a veteran. I had PTSD. I had substance abuse issues. I had emotional regulation issues, anger issues, and I got help, and I'm trying to be better. And now I am this different person. Whereas Eric Swalwell, I do not believe has ever had a reckoning. I don't think he's been, he has said, I did these things and it was wrong. I think Plattner started his campaign by saying, I came back from war fucked up and I did some fucked up things. Now, is that enough for the voters of Maine? I don't know. It's enough for me, though. I believe that people can change. I believe that people can be better. And I do not believe in purity testing Democratic candidates. I do not want a Democratic Party that only elects people who have never done anything wrong in their entire life because they have known they wanted to be in politics since they were a baby. Alrighty, let's see here. Sophia says, but if people need to show ID to get a driver's license, what makes the SAVE Act different? You, as far as I know, Sophia, you don't need to show ID to get a driver's license because the driver's license is oftentimes the first ID that people get. The difference is that if you require a piece of ID to vote and you control how people are able to get that ID, then you are able to make it hard for them to get that ID and therefore hard for them to vote. The Democrats have already come out with a compromise. They've already said, all right, you want voter ID, let's make IDs free and easy to get. And Republicans refuse to vote on that compromise. That to me seems plainly obvious that the SAVE Act is a voter suppression bill. But as far as all the data shows, even data from right-wing organizations like the Heritage Foundation, that voter fraud is not a problem, and voter IDs would not solve. So there's no problem for voter IDs to solve, and even if it was, it would not solve whatever problem they think exists. Alrighty, let's see here. Odinson says, how does the Democratic Party reverse their image as a weak party? I don't think there's anything the Democratic Party can do to fix that image because the billionaire class owns all of our information channels, and so they are always going to be pushing that narrative no matter what they do. So I think it's up to us. I think it's up to us to refuse to believe it. Hold on a second. Well, I just got booted off my live stream. All right, well, I was basically done anyways. All right, to everybody who is watching on Twitch and YouTube, thank you for being here. I am out of here, and I will talk to you guys later. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Goodbye, 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 goodbye.